Hey everybody, another episode of the Indie Hour. For those of you who've never caught this before, this is my weekly show where we check out boutique games, small print games, self-published games, and games you might not have heard of. And it's completely picked and sort of like nominated by the GMG patrons. So once a week we get together and we check out a new indie game. We go through like the core rules, talk about maybe where to get models. And at the front and back of it, we have like a little sit and chat. Like I do a recording basically in the middle of all of it. And the before and after is like sort of just a separate little like hangout AMA live show where we get about a half hour of additional content for everybody to just sort of see how their week's going. A midweek checkup, if you will, for my GMG community. And this week we are checking out Of Oil and Iron. I will admit this was probably one of two times, this is episode 41, two times I've put my thumb on the scale to pick a game. That's because this particular game Of Oil and Iron has kind of just like crept up on me and was in the middle of a crowdfund when the designer Scott got in touch. And much like with Great Helm, I wanted to make sure it got a bit of a signal boost before the crowdfund ended. Not that there won't be like more time and probably like a late backer pledge thing too. But short story long, Of Oil and Iron is a kitchen table scaled diesel punk mecha skirmish game. If you want to grab a free STL, it's fully 3D printable, and these STLs are free. You can just email and they'll send you one of these guys right here. I believe he's called a Hijack, and he's one of the like mercenary free company rigs. They are all fully posable with a variety of different weapons in each design, and you can print and put them together in two different scales, either 15 or 32. So it's designed to play from like a small up to large battle scale, but the standard kind of game size between 2 and 4 models on like a kill team mat, like a 22 by 30 size mat. You can see here the customized rigs, build your squadron little section of his website. And you can, again, if you want to make the table bigger, you could just put it in 32 as well and have like much larger mechs. I really like diesel punk as a style. It's a lot less common than steampunk or like magic steampunk, like War Machine style magic steampunk. And what's even less common is when you don't base it in real life. One of the things I really like about this is there's no attachment to our real world. This diesel punk is just it's more like the video game Dishonored, right? Like it's like a fantasy world version of diesel punk, where corporations have basically, after like a massive cataclysmic climate event, they call the smog fall, corporations are basically the only thing still in charge. It's got a bunch of stuff in its DNA, the post-apocalypticness of it. You've got a lot of crunch and like there's some heat management, but not too much. And then some card-based weapon and stat designs too, taking cues from, there's tons of stuff in here. There's everything from Titanicus to Battletech to even like, a couple of my own games like Steel Rift and Gamma Wolves that Scott said were inspirations for the design of this game. But he wanted to be quick to play, quick to assemble. That's why he wanted the card-driven stuff for creating your iron budget. The iron budget is sort of like the massive amount of tons that you have. And then the cards would allow you to just like spend that budget and equip your mech quickly and then get down and play the game. So without having to do a lot of book flipping, he wanted the game to take up a small amount of table space, have cool like visuals. And then because he only wanted to he's doing all this himself, he's helping the minis, doing the books and the art and stuff. He wanted the minis he did make to be fully customizable. So he's got his own. You can actually buy the minis right now. He's been doing most of the development through his Patreon and his tribe on Cults 3D, or not Cults 3, on My Mini Factory, the other one. And this is basically allowed him to get as far as he did. And now he's trying to get the book actually in print. He needs to raise some money, and so that's why he's doing the Kickstarter. So you can see here he's got the full gamut of like his mechs available. And if you go to his store, here's an example of the Stalker, and I've actually painted up a bunch of these. This is the amount of parts you get it in. So you can reverse the arms basically by flipping them in like your STL, like your rendering program. And then the mechs themselves are like fully posable. And I actually painted up my first 2 of these guys, the Crim Corporation, or first 4 of them, the Crim Corporation, this week, so we can play a game. So Bob and I can get to playing. Bob's printing all the, I'm handling the forces, the initial forces, so we can try the game out. And Bob, because he's got the big FDM printer, he's printing all of the terrain. And there's a gajillion kits available if you go to his store. You can see this is not something you have to wait on if you just want to go and start printing things. He's got collections for all, and it's like a full faction because you can print as many of these as you want. All 4 of the mech designs and all of their stuff. I think they're all $65. So you're getting a whole army, like unlimited, like it's all you'll ever need for that faction, for $65, and it goes light through super heavy. And you can buy them all individually and stuff too. There's a whole like terrain kit. There's an oil fracking facility, some cool generators. Like here's the super heavy, the Dominator super heavy rig for the Crim, which is the faction I just did. I had printed the mediums and the largest, but you see it comes with like all these guns, and it's fully posable. So once you have the one STL, you can make as many of these as you want. So that's nice. I like the fact that everything's like already kind of here and available. Like there's no having to like wait for anything to come out if you want to start playing and start playing right away. And he's also done the table to go with it. Because that's one of the great things about these like STL style games is you can theme everything. So you have to wait for the terrain kits, right? He's got these great kind of Bioshocky, terrain kits already done, pre-supported, and you can print them in any scale you want. So I love these buildings. I think these are super cool. It's maybe my favorite part about it so far, actually, is that it has all of this like additional stuff to make the table look just right. And I am lucky that I have a friend with a cool STL. I'm like $15 to print as many of these as you want. That ain't bad. And then there's also like an oil pumper. Like there's like every kind of piece of terrain for all the different factions and stuff too. But as you're playing on a kill team board, you don't even need that much. So 5 factions here. Arcus Technologies, Nox Industries, the Free Gear Coalition, which is the Mercenaries, the Crim Corporation, which is what I'm working on right now, and Triton Engineering, which is the one I'm doing next, because they're the underwater dudes. I really like this. I'm a big sucker for Bioshock, and so this was kind of my favorite of the two. So let's take a look, as they would say in Reading Rainbow, in a book, and have a look at the rules so you guys can get an idea of what we're talking about here. So I'll stop yammering on about cool miniatures, although I'm a sucker for cool miniatures, as you may or may not know. And we're going to look at the rules for the game. So this is the alpha rulebook. So this is what he's got going on right now. Obviously, I think everyone who's a self-publishing designer does, and I think Sean Sutter from Metal King will be the person that backs this up for me immediately, is when you first put something out into the world, you have it gets way more eyeballs than you could possibly put on immediately. And so he's keeping his basic alpha rule set to just light and medium mechs for now, because he's afraid it will immediately collapse under the weight of people trying to break it, which happens. It can very easily happen. And so this is sort of like the initial offer, basically, just so people can try the game out and see what it looks like. So Scott Hadley, developed by Scott Hadley, first edition, 2025, all rights reserved. We get the background for the game, and like why an alpha. I kind of just paraphrased this a second ago, but the idea here is that the things he wants to work on through getting playtesting feedback from people actually trying it out during the crowdfund before he goes to deliver and then finishes the rulebook. Is like get the rig profiles right, make the lights feel light and the mediums feel medium, get the iron costs right from best guesses to like math driven ones. Iron costs are very small. So like if you have like an iron budget of 5, a gun would cost like 1 or 2. There's not a lot of granularity and space in there. So typically what he's going to have to do is adjust the value of like the commodity itself, not the cost, if that makes sense. Weapons and perks, engine heat and action economy, so making sure it feels tense. You get a lot of actions in this one, which I like, but you'll see why when we actually get to the rules. Equipment that you can get stuff to, and then like go through all the sort of like editing stuff at the end, making sure the errors are gone and there's no spelling stuff. And then we get like a what's coming, which would include things like campaign rules, updating some of the older miniatures, just more game aids, stuff like that. And then we get our background for the universe. Obviously, this is it's not our world. None of these corporations really exist. All 5 of them are kind of themed. 5 is a good number for factions when you're doing an offer like this. You always want an odd number, and then you always need something that represents people outside of the system. So I like the fact that there's the free gears, and then the other 4 are kind of like you've got the water power, the aristocratic power, the industrial power, and then the like freaky super science dudes are basically the 4 different powers here that emerge after Smogfall. We go through the rise and fall before Smogfall, which is, kind of like the Industrial Revolution, right? And then the Smogfall becomes so terrible that everyone has to go to like little enclaves to survive the smog. And then after Smogfall, all the governments have collapsed. It's just corporations and they're like private enclaves all warring with each other over whatever's left in the corporate ascendancies. And now we're like in an age of oil and iron, an age of endless war. And so you see here, the ruthless aristocrats of the Krim Corporation, the industrial giants of Nox Industries, the ocean-born survivors of Triton Engineering, and born from the visionaries that were ignored before the smog falls, people that said it was coming, are the Arcus Technologies. Think like Nikola Tesla, living, in Antarctica. And then rebels and deserters, the Free Gear Coalition, they're your freedom fighters, basically. And then we get an idea of like what a rig is. They're basically repurposed industrial equipment that have been turned into big fighting machines because you can survive in the smog. All right, scale. It's designed for 15 mil, but you can play it in 32 if you want because it's fun to do that and just double the distances within the rules and make the game bigger. What you need to play, you need your rig command terminals, some weapon cards and equipment cards, and you have to print those. And you need your miniatures, some D6s and a D12. So the D6s are what you'll most commonly use for like your armor values and stuff. D12s are like your typical like random number generation. And then a game board, 22 by 30 would be like standard, 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 feet could also be played with. I like the 22 by 30 because it gives you a wide deploy. It's almost like the combination of a 2 by 2 or 3 by 3. So it's wider than a 2 by 2, right? And not quite as deep. So it kind of feels like it's like just a mini 6x4. And with the number count of models, it's about right. The rulebook and then your command terminals and stuff. You can see our example of a game laid out. And we'll get to the terminals and stuff in a second. All right, rigs. It's all standardized. So a light's on a 40, a medium's on a 50, a heavy's on a 60, and an 80 millimeter base would be for the super heavies. Now, you can see here my little collection. This is on 40s and 50s. So that gives you an idea of how big they are. Even the smallest rigs are relatively huge. Like those medium rigs are on 50 mil bases. And if you know in GW scale terms, like those are big. Those are way bigger than like a Space Marine Terminator. Those are huge like models. So a good size for sure. And then there's stat blocks. So the stat block you can see here on the card, and that's going to be their speed, so the maximum distance they can move, their aim, so that's their to hit roll, their iron, that's the budget they have for buying guns and extra equipment and stuff, their weapon slots, that's pretty common. So mediums and up to basically light to heavy can have 2 guns, a colossal can have 3. And the only real advantage to that is you can fire each gun once before you take the reload action. So you can effectively fire 3 guns and then do 2 other things during your activation if you've got 3 weapons. Your structure points, all your 4 damage locations will have usually between 3 and 6 structure points. If you go to 0, you have to roll for catastrophic damage and see what happens for that location type. And then you've got your armor, and these are basically like a to hit score of how resistant your armor is. And this like scaling range, let's say it's like 10 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 19. Just, it's like you roll a die and you add the strength of the attack, and whatever your total result is how many points of damage you do that location. So obviously the higher the threshold, the better. And then your equipment, anything that you have like already baked in. And then they're like non-weapon components. And then your engines and your engine exhausts. Your engines track how much you have to like, how many things you can do. And then every action you take is going to heat up your engine by 1. At the end of the turn, your exhaust rating is what you reduce it by. So basically your exhaust rating means you can always kind of like do your exhaust rating in actions every turn before you start to heat up. And for the first couple turns, you might just do that. And that's really it. And you also have your number of turns, your pivot speed, which I don't think is it mentioned here? Speed. Well, they don't mention pivot here. All right, no, for that, Scott, put pivot in here. Your pivot rating is how many times you can make a turn during a movement, a 90-degree turn. So if you make a move action that's like forward, you'd move your 4 inches forward. You can make up to 3 90-degree turns during that movement. And that's it, sort of like all just pushed out. So you can see at the top, there's your engine. I would also recommend, Scott, when you do the engine, the first and last numbers both kind of look like 8. That font does not have enough difference between the 0 and the 8. Just hollow out that 0 because there's no other zeros in this, I don't think. And that's going to add your roll on the engine damage or engine table when you actually do that. So like, for instance, this rig right here, the hijack, which is the free one that you would get. Hijack, I did say hijack, yeah. He could take 2 actions every turn without ever worrying about overheating, but he can actually do up to his total max, which is 5, and still go down 2 and just land at 3 in his first activation. So it's managing your heat is pretty simple in this one. It's really visual too. You can see now the bottom there, you got your hull. So like his hull has got 600 points on it. So you put a 6-sided dice up there. Arms have 5, so 5, and you would reduce it down until it's completely gone, in which case it's cracked open. You roll for devastating damage on that, or catastrophic damage on that location. For his hull, on a D6 plus the strength of the attacks, let's say his own light machine gun was attacking him, he would have to roll a 6 to do any damage whatsoever, and only do a single point. So he'd have to take 6 machine gun hits before it would do any damage. Whereas that rivet gun, which has the strength of 8, on a 2 will do damage, but if he rolls a 6, it'll do 2 points of damage, because he would go to a 14, which is severe damage there. So really, every rig is going to be slightly different, and there's a good chance that some rigs, like their armor is just so heavy that you can't even really get through it. The equipment cards, you can see that's the high caliber ammunition. Choose one weapon on this rig, and it has +1 strength. So like you can make a light machine gun strength 5. And then you get your weapon stats. So weapon has rate of fire, how many dice you roll when you attack, trying to hit the aim value, modified for like distance and range and stuff. The strength of the attack, which is what you're going to add a d6 to try and crack the armor. And then it's range. So short range is up to 6. Long range is up to 12. And then you have an accuracy modifier for those 2 ranges. This will look pretty familiar to anybody who's got any experience for the game like Dubs Titanic is. Now, the class there, light class, light machine gun, that means it can be equipped to light weapons. And light class, I think, comes in later on. Although this rulebook is designed in a way where you don't have to worry about equipping weapons to people. The future rulebooks might be like you can have any light class weapon. It allows them to add to it later on. But for this one, they just have a bunch of tables of like what you can and can't buy for people. And then engines and heat. So your heat threshold basically is at the end of the rig's activation, consult the status of the game. If the engine heat location is on any numbers, so +0 or more, so basically once you go over 5 heat, you got to start rolling on the heat threshold table. And you add whatever that number is. That's why that 0 is really important, because it doesn't need to start at +8. So at +0, you roll a d12, and the most you could get is a fuel line rupture, suffer damage to the hull. As for each following activation, roll a d12 on a 6+, take another additional damage to the hull until it's repaired. So those are the worst that could happen. Once you go higher, at +8, you could get a catastrophic failure. You suffer catastrophic damage to all your components, and heat can no longer be decreased. So everything just blows up, basically. And we're going to play in the game. So that's the core. Again, the core stat block for the rigs is relatively simple. And then we're into the game turn. So the initiative phase, there's no missions published yet. This is just an alpha, obviously. But it's basically just an I go, you go until everybody's dead. Initiative phase is roll a d12 and reroll to try and get higher than your opponent. And then activation phase. Take it in turns activating a single rig sequentially based on the initiative order. Each rig completes its actions before moving on to the next available rig. If a player doesn't have any left to activate, the other person gets to go. And then maintenance phase, handle any of the end around stuff like your maintenance and heat management and stuff like that. And then rest and repeat. Once the round's concluded, the game resets the initiative phase of the next round unless victory conditions are met. Activation, engines, and action points. So everybody gets 5 action points. Every action costs a certain number of points. And remember, you're going to gain a heat every time you do an action. So move would create a heat, right? Fire weapon would create a heat. Ram would create a heat. Shutdown doesn't give you any heat though, because it actually lets you bleed off heat. And then prepare and use equipment. Prepare has a bunch of different variations of what you can be preparing for. So you can be like bracing for impact, trying to return fire, get ready to move. And then use equipment is based on the card. If a card says you have an action, it might generate more or less heat. So the move action, you can move 3 different directions. So either forward, backpedal, or sidestep. Each of those is like a standard move, and you get your pivot count and number of pivots you can do at the same time. So when you reverse directly backwards, you go 2 inches for every available movement that you've moved. And every move can incorporate different types of movement. So you could like back up to pivot and then move more forward, right? So if you have a movement of 4, you could back up an inch, spending 2 inches, pivot 90 degrees, and then move 2 inches, right, for that first action. It would generate 1 heat, and then that would be your first of your AP. And then you can keep doing that. So like a single model with a speed of 4 and 5 actions could move 20 inches over the course of the turn maneuvering. So you're pretty maneuverable, and because you get 3 pivots during the move, you can kind of like freely wheel around as well. Fire a gun. You pick a single weapon and do the attack procedure. Called shot, make a fire weapon action, choosing the location, but you're -2 accuracy. So normally that means you'd hit on a 6. You always hit on 6s during shooting attacks. Ram, this is sort of like an unconventional melee attack based on your size. When a rig rams another, their hulls crash together, inflicting D6 strength X hits on each other, where X is based on the weight class of the model. You can ram yourself into an enemy that's within 1 inch, moving into base-to-base contact. So basically, when you make the ram action, you automatically move into base-to-base. But you hit each other. So like a heavy hitting a light isn't that bad, but a light hitting a heavy might just blow up the light. Reload, if you want to fire a weapon again that you've already fired during the turn, it has to be reloaded first. Shut down. When activating a rig before any other actions, you can choose to forfeit all your actions and your engine heat goes to 0. Basically, you turn it off and turn it back on again. Use an equipment card, and then preparations. These are neat. So prepare evasive maneuver. After a unit resolves an action, you can make a move action up to half the speed value in any direction. If the rig's out of range or line of sight, the attack fails. And this is when you're targeted before the attack's made, in this case. Return fires after someone makes an attack at you. You can shoot back with a weapon that's ready. Prepare brace for incoming fire. Increase armor by +2 for all front-facing attacks until the end of the round. Now, this is the only one that either needs more words, I think, Scott, or I would actually just flip it and say reduce the strength of all incoming attacks by 2 for all front-facing attacks. Because the math is the same if you reduce the attack strength, and you don't have to worry about changing this like laundry list of numbers. Because adding +2 to your armor means you need to do the math on, okay, well, a direct now is 12 to 15, a severe on my hull is 16 to 17, a critical is now 18 plus. That's too much mathing when you could just reduce the strength of the overall attack and then compare it to the same table. So I would have brace for incoming fire, reduce the weapon strength coming in as opposed to increasing the armor value. But I'd also have it be spent afterwards because the rest of these get spent. And this is like the most valuable thing you could do. You're reducing all weapon strength by 2 can make some things like completely indestructible. So I would have not the next round, the next attack. I would have that be because prepare evasive maneuver goes away, return fire then goes away, but it doesn't look like brace for incoming fire does. And you do put it face down, so your opponent doesn't know what you're getting ready to do, but either way, yeah, you have them all go away after the first time it's done. Just my take on that. Attacking and damage. Declare the attacker target. This is real simple. Pick your going to try and attack with your gun. Check the range to them. See if you can see them. Your -1 accuracy if it's 25% obscured. If it's up to 50% obscured, it's -2. Roll to hit. 6 is always hit on D6. Roll as many dice as your rate of fire. So like that machine gun would have rolled 6 dice. Apply any weapon effects. So like perks can do different damages, right? So if you have like special ammo or perks on your guns, it might do a bunch of different things. There's a whole like laundry list of those later on. And then see where your hits. Roll D12. 1 to 4 is the hull. 5 to 7 is the arms. 8 to 10 is the legs. And then on 11 to 12 is the engine. Called shots. Obviously, you get to pick the location. Then do your impact roll. You also get to add to that for side and rear shots. It's +2 strength on the side, +4 strength on the rear. That's why I think you're already modifying strength on the impact roll here for like location. Just do the same thing for that, that brace for damage. Because modifying strength it's the static number, not the scaling one. It makes more sense. And then see how much damage you've taken based upon where it hits in the threshold. So 1 for direct, 2 for severe, 3 for critical. If you go to 0, you suffer catastrophic damage. You're going to roll on the table. Sorry, not roll on the table. You have to apply the effects. Damage overflow. If an attack hits a rig whose location has 0 structure points, that rig location is already destroyed. The location of the rig's controller chooses another location on the rig that's not destroyed to receive the damage. You get to pick where it goes. Catastrophic damage. When a rig's location structure drops to 0, you're -2 to your movement for legs, and you can't backpedal. If legs take any additional damage, you're completely immobilized and can't move. If arms are destroyed, the rig is also destroyed because you've lost both those things. In the hull, you start to malfunction. You're -2 maximum actions, -1 aim. Any additional damage, total system failure is considered destroyed. And then arms catastrophic damage. Randomly determine which arm is destroyed. Roll a d12 and consult the following table. So it's left or right, and then colossal is left, right, or hull. When it's destroyed, you can't. If the same weapon suffers more catastrophic damage, the ammo goes off, and you take 3 more damage to your hull. And the legs are also destroyed. The rigs are destroyed because you can't walk around. And then your engine, the engine's heat cannot be reduced below the first numbered space. You're always rolling to overheat now. If the engine takes any additional one, you go in a total system failure and you're destroyed. You might blow up. On a 4+, you explode, then based on your class, you do more and more hits. Colossal rigs, all rigs within 6 inches suffer 2 d6 plus strength 14 hits. Those things melt down big. Then you do maintenance phase. At the end of it all, each rig has their heat tracker on number threshold rolls. All rigs go down by your exhaust value for heat, and then remove all preparation tokens that haven't been triggered and resolve any effects that were triggered in the maintenance phase. So remove all preparation tokens from rigs who have chosen to prepare and were not triggered. Makes me think that the incoming fire one, it says for the next round. I think that one's supposed to be removed too, because otherwise it'd be just way too powerful. You would always do it. You would always choose to do it. And then we got our weapon perks. So like armor piercing, for every impact roll of 6, add D3 to the results. It's kind of like rending. Bombardment, you can attack things on a line of sight at -2 accuracy. Charge shot, when attacking with this weapon, the ironclad may choose to change fire modes to charge shot, which has +2 strength, but for each attack roll of 1, increase its engine heat by 1, as you're drawing too much power. Resolve impact rolls for other rigs hit within the range for explosive. Reroll 1 for flak. Full auto. When attacking with this weapon, the ironclad can choose to change fire mode to full auto. Increase rate of fire by 2, but a reroll of 1, increase your heat by 1. The called shot action can't be made when using engaging in full auto, because you're spraying and praying, baby. Hot. Firing this weapon increases the engine heat by 2 instead of 1. Some weapons have hot before a perk, which means that the weapon is not hot by default, but if you push it, it becomes hot. So this is kind of like overcharging your weapons in Battletech. Hull. Colossal rigs can have a weapon equipped in their hull. Weapons with the hull trait may only be equipped on a colossal rig, so some things have to go on your hull. Impale, when a weapon successfully hits the target on an 8+, it impales the rig. They're immobilized and can't move until this rig's next activation, and they can still pivot. Basically, you chain them to you. Incendiary, your heat goes up by X when you hit them. Limited ammo. You can only fire it X times per game. Melee, you have to be within 1 to do it. It's just like a range attack, though. Precision. You can aim shot without the -2 accuracy. And then shock, on a successful hit during the target's next activation, its move is reduced by half, running down. Staggering turns you around, and then sustained fire. Whenever you roll to hit with a 6, it causes 2 hits instead of 1, so exploding 6s. Then we get like an example of the turn. You can see things moving around and fighting each other. How to roll to hit. I love when they put in like a little demo like this. This is really smart. I do think like this is following my favorite trainer methodology, which is tell, show, have a go in a circle, right? This is the have a go section of it. More rule books should have this, like an example of in play, even just narratively written. Really, really handy. And I think just adds a lot to the rule book. So good for him for having that in here. And we had a quick ref. Heat threshold and catastrophic damage. So you can refer to all that stuff during the game. And then how do you make a squadron? Okay, so interesting thing here. This game is points free. You pick an operation size, and then you pick a formation inside of it. So a skirmish would be played on like a kill team mat. And you can pick either a sword, mace, spear, or dagger formation for your group of rigs. So a sword formation, you get 2 light and a medium. So that's what I basically built for here. You can see I've got some choices in my mediums, and I got 2 lights, right? So what I'll probably end up doing is getting a couple more lights in there, and that way I can also do the bottom one, which is dagger, which is 4 lights. Now, maces and spears are a medium and a heavy for the mace. Spear is 2 lights and a heavy. And this is just going to allow you some different like options. Now you go to operation, you can see a claymore is just 1 of each, light, medium, heavy, colossal. And this is kind of the Titanicus of it all, right? You have your different like axiom formation, like different formations. But by doing this points free and having an iron budget, it means you can build your force really quickly. Broadsword is 3 lights, a medium, and a colossal. So effectively what he's eyeballing here is like 3 lights are worth a heavy, 2 lights are worth a medium. I imagine 4 lights are worth a colossal is like the math here. But like remove the colossal, you get 2 heavies, a medium, and a light. Morningstar is 3 mediums, a heavy, and a light. And then a scythe is a medium and 3 heavies. So lots of choices here. And then Warfront, like the most you'd ever have in a Warfront, I think is 8. because the great sword is 4 lights, 2 mediums, a heavy, and a colossal. That's a great big game. That'd be a 4x4 table size game, which is like a huge operation. And then you get your iron costs, obviously, for equipping things. Now, it does say that later on there will be like some manufacturer-specific ones for like different factions. But for this alpha rulebook, he's just laid it out for people to be able to see quickly. And then we've got our actual like units. So the Crim, you can see here the Stalker, and they've given him the weapon options, just what they have available. So they can take missile racks, miniguns, machine guns, rivet cannons, and light melee weapons. So the one I built a cannon missile launcher. So that's 1 iron for a cannon and then 2 for a missile rack, so 3. And he's got an iron budget of 4, so I can still take an upgrade on him. And that's the one on the right. And then on the left, the Ravager, or actually the left one is the Stalker with the minigun and a chainsaw, because I want to use the chainsaw. So I just count that as a light melee weapon. And then that's 1. And then he's also got a minigun, which is 2. So 3 total. So again, I can take a single like upgrade on him. So I kind of have like a ranged one and an up close one. The minigun is 6 to 12 inch range, whereas the cannon and the missile rack both go up to like, I think the missile rack goes to 18, which is awesome. And then the Ravagers I built one with a double cannon. So he's got a auto cannon, so like the dum-dum, so he's the one on the right there with the double barrels. And it has armor piercing, which is neat. And then I also gave him a flamethrower. So he's already spent 4 of his 6 iron budget right there. And then I've got 2 iron left to give him additional stuff. He just looks cool. And then the other one I made more of a long range firing one. So he has a, I think I gave him an arc rifle. Or no, the other guy's got a twin machine gun. That's what he's got. He's got a twin machine gun. And then this guy's got a flamethrower. This guy's got the the twin machine gun. No, the twin machine gun. Oh, the cannon. He's got 2 cannons is what I bought him. And then 2 auto cannons rather. And then one of them has the long barreled upgrade to make it that sniper rifle. So his right hand gun there has the long barrel. And that reduces its rate of fire by 1, but adds 2 to its strength. So it's strength 10. So he's like my long-range sniper. And he's got 2 points left for upgrades. But I think the long barrel was a point, because I basically had it modeled on. That's right. So yeah. So those are my Crim. And then you can see the other factions. Nox Industries, you have these big heavy guys, the Hazard and the Caustic. And they've got access to other weapons, so like Power Claws. The Caustic has an impact ram he can take. This is Triton Engineering. These are the ones I painted up next. I love the Trench. He's so cool. He's a big daddy. I immediately wanted to paint him, so I printed 4 trenches because I just wanted to have them. And then I got to print 2 Nautiluses, and they've got things like Vice Claws, rivet guns, a Gouge Anchor, which is a special melee weapon, melee impale and armor piercing. It's worth 2. And then, so I think I gave one a rivet gun and a gouge anchor, and the other one I gave a hook shot, which impales and an anchor, because I wanted to have like 2 like underwatery guys. Then I gave a variety of different weapons to the other ones. And the Nautilus, I'll probably take the mortar cannon on because it's just cool, or maybe the sniper cannon. Then we've got Arcus Technology. This is like the high tech, like the electrical ones, opposed to diesel. You can see they're all like Tesla coil powered, and they get things like magnetic guns, arc swords. Rail rifles, arc spears, arc repeaters. And then the Free Gear Coalition. I like that these guys are just like old school, like it's saw blades and mech rifles, recoilless cannons, long barreled machine guns, ripper saws. Just neat. Like, I don't know. They look like the good guys to me. They look like G.I. Joes. They look like the good guys to me. I don't know why. And that's it. We have our remaining rig equipment. So this is like offered to anybody. It's like universal equipment, like smoke dispensers, cool engine coolant. So your heat thresholds go down by 1. That's a good one. High caliber ammunition, plus on strength to a gun. Stabilized weapon joints. You can fire weapons within 180 degrees as opposed to 90. Fuel concentrate. So you have +2 to your speed. That's amazing. An impact roll cage. Melee and ram attacks against this are -2 strength. The only one I don't understand is reinforced frame. For 0 iron, you get +1 iron. Why wouldn't everyone take that? Each equipment can only be taken once per rig. You would just take that always, because it costs you nothing and ups your iron cap by 1. I don't know. That one doesn't make any sense. And then reactive doesn't have a cost. So obviously alpha rulebook, right? And that's it. So there we go. A look at, well, there's my minis. And then oil and iron. From Scott and his cool cults not cult, tribe on my mini factory. Scouts of First Studio, that's what it's called. So yeah, another one on the books. Good luck to him on his crowdfund. I should mention, actually, sorry, before we get any further on here, I should mention it's well funded. Like this is, they don't need my help here. But I really liked the look of this. What are we doing here? I just want to go to the Kickstarter. There it is. And see the actual Kickstarter. Yeah, he's already raised $70K of his $18,000 goal. He's good to go, but he's got 6 days left. So if you want to get in on it, you can. But it was worth mentioning that, it was done. I'm really excited about this one. So Bob and I will probably do a first look using the alpha rulebook relatively soon. I just got to paint up these, the second faction. I'm going to paint up the Triton engineering guys, and get some, terrain done on his end, and then we'll get together and play through the core mechanics of the game so you guys can look at it on the table. And that should be in the next couple weeks, but I wanted to just give it a shout now because I'm really enjoying painting these and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So there it is. Another episode of the Indie Hour done. Next week, we've got another one coming up. It's already pre-recorded, but we will be recording the week after is that Wednesday. We record these every Wednesday. We typically record them as the previous week's is airing, and I'm going to go head over to hang out with the patrons now for a little Q&A and additional stuff, and see what they think about the game and what they're excited for me to build next. They actually picked Triton Engineering. We went through all of the stuff on the website, and they were like, do the BioShock ones. That's what we want. And of course, this is only possible with the help of the patrons. This is fully a patron-produced series that we do, so if you want to see it keep going, you can join the GMG Patreon. That lets you nominate games. That's how games typically get nominated, unless something really catches my eye like this did, and then they get selected by poll every single week. So that is how stuff gets on the Indie Hours. If you think indie games should get more attention, then that is how you can support the community. So, thanks for watching. See you for more Indie Hour next week. Till then, Ash.